Really, it's about living life at 30,000 feet. We got to live in the weeds, and the view is always going to be the same in the weeds. You have no vision.
Right.
All you're doing is you're getting whacked in the face by weeds.
Right.
How fast you're flying, you really just don't see anything. And I think if you can really pull that joystick up to 30,000 feet and see the big picture perspective, enlighten your heart and open it up and get rid of some of that baggage, right? When you think about how a balloon works, right? You have super cold air molecules at the bottom from an altitude standpoint. And as you inject hot air into the balloon, guess what? The molecules separate. Well, you have densely compact molecules here at this altitude. So what does the balloon want to do? The molecules want to equate to the similar distance spread. And so the balloon starts to rise until it equates, and so forth and so on. So what I'm suggesting is maybe you got to put some warmth in your heart, some heat in your heart, so you can get that altitude and you can rise, you can see things differently.
Right.
Because it's all about the big picture. Where we get the biggest stresses in life is when we can't see ahead. We can't predict what's happening ahead. But if you plan, do, act, check, and you sort of go up at a higher altitude, you can see much bigger what's happening ahead of you. You can plan much more in a quality way, and you have a lot less surprises. But again, it starts with, I got to let go of some things. I got to let go of some things that are just, bogging me down, dragging me down. It's like a big weight on my foot. And if we can cut that and use the analogy of a balloon and how it flies and get a higher altitude, which again, I think is about warming your heart up, meaning being open. Because a lot of people have this cold steel heart because we've been hurt, right? And we're not open to anything. And don't you tell me what to do, and I'm going to wallow in my misery. And I want you to feel sorry for me as I wallow in my misery. Meanwhile, I'm not going to change because I got a cold cast iron heart. And here this pattern goes again. So I think it's really an opportunity to do the internal work and to think about softening the heart, not so you can be run over by other people, but so that your response to things could be a quality for you, could be a benefit for you.
Man, absolutely. It's that. And I love that analogy because when you warm your heart, you're not threatened, right? When you're above the fray, you're not threatened. It's like, it's almost, this is an inverse, but let's say that the waves are choppy at the ocean. I'm in the Pacific and I'm just kind of bodyboarding and the waves are just nuts. All I have to do is just swim just underneath it. And the current can be whatever it is, but underneath there, it's softer. It's the same thing with the balloon analogy. When you're above it, you're not affected by it. And so you can make that calculated decision. And I think for the people who are like, I don't know how to warm my heart or at least open myself to a different story. Maybe they're not cold. Maybe this is just the only story that they have, which is cold. But maybe the next step is just to, okay, if you're in the weeds, notice the weeds. Just look at them and say, oh, here's a weed. And be able to disconnect from the story. This weed is strangling out my life, but just to say, this is a weed. This is not where I want to be my entire life, but this is where I'm at right now. And if you can at least accept it, what you do is you reduce the weight of the story, because there's two things. There's what happens and what you think about what happens. They both can be heavy. Something that happens can suck. It can be a bad thing and it's heavy. But then the story about it, that's doubling the weight. How can you float? How can you rise to the top when you're doubling the weight? If you let go of the thought and just call it the suck that it is, if you let go of the story of why does this always happen to me, or of course, if you let go of that story, then all you exist with is just the suck. And then if you can become curious, and this is what I just was talking with my previous client, it's not just about sitting in the suck and being curious about it. And I asked him, why did I say be curious about it? He said, when you're curious about it, then all of a sudden you're detached from it. Curiosity requires an inquisitive mind. To be questioning it is to doubt your full understanding of it. And if you doubt your full understanding of it, that means that it's not you. You haven't fully identified with it. If you can curiously look at this suck, look at this weed, then you're free from being attached to it and the story that's attached to it. Boom. Now you get a little bit lighter. Then you put a little bit of warmth in your heart because you become grateful that at least you're able to see this objectively as opposed to be owned by it. And then that puts a little bit of that fire in that heart and allows you to raise up.